Okay, here we go. Baruch Hashem. Another 5 minutes of tefillah. Rav Shimshon Pincus today begins discussing a difficult topic, but he's going to give us an eitzah, a piece of advice, how something which seems beyond us could hopefully be palatable, that each and every one of us could apply in some level to our tefillah. Says Rav Shimshon Pincus, he begins by quoting the Rambam in Meir Nevuchim. Says the Rambam a famous line, a line that we've repeated, I'm sure many have heard, that at the moment that one thinks about Hashem, at that moment, he is with Hashem in reality. You think about God, you are with God at that moment. Says of Shimshon Bingus, what exactly does that mean? What that means is when you're performing a mitzvah, an avodah, you're shaking a lulav, you're hearing shofar, you're listening to Kriyas HaTorah. The mitzvah itself is one level. But when one at that moment is cognizant, thinks of the fact that I'm performing a service to Hashem, that thought, that mindset elevates the action to a completely different realm. And he says so much so, it could come out an astounding fact. A mitzvah could only contain that much within it. Shofar on Rosh Hashanah, Talmud Torah, only has a limited capabilities of the mitzvah, its segulais, its powers of the mitzvah. But when one thinks at the moment of the mitzvah, I'm performing something to Hashem, that thought elevates the mitzvah to a higher plateau, a higher realm, so much more than even the mitzvah itself. Because the mitzvah, he explains, is on this world. Whereas when I think about Hashem, when I connect to God, it's elevating me out of this world and putting me face to face together with Him. And with this understanding, says Shimshon Pincus, of course, what are we getting to? That when you start to daven, when you're cognizant, when you think, I'm standing, I'm talking to God, that thought does what? That thought elevates you higher and higher, all the way up to the fact that you're standing and you're with Hashem. And he quotes Eliyahu Hanavi, who says, Ad Masayat Paischem al Shtei Seifim. Eliyahu Navi warns us, you're talking to Hashem, but you're thinking about something else. So what's happening? Says if Shimshon Pincus, let's play it out. You think about God, you're up there with Him. And then you start thinking about something else in the middle of davening. You just fell back down to the earth. And then maybe a moment later, you have kavana, and then you fall back down and you're bouncing around the entire tefillah. But the problem obviously is to have a purity of thought, to be able to hold in one's conscious the entire time. I'm talking to Hashem, I'm standing in front of Him, is very difficult. And says of Shimshon Pincus, at this juncture of the Sefer, in the Pirkei Siyam, I'm not utilizing this moment to tell you about the power of Kavana. That's something that you know, and that's something that you have to work on, and it's extremely difficult. But he says, let me give you a piece of advice, because there's something that we all could do. And he says, what is that? That is an external display of connection to Hashem. Maybe we are all not holding that thought that we're talking to God at every moment of tefillah. But are we holding at a place to be able to not have physical hand motions to someone else during davening? We could start by working on the physical ways, the external ways we act during davening, during brachos. He says during benching. How many times during benching do we motion to someone, wait? He says at that moment when you make that motion, you know you just did. You just severed that tie. You're all the way up there in heaven. Because even externally, the fact that you were cognizant of what you were doing, even if your mind wasn't there, but your external action was there, you were sitting, you were saying the words, but then you motioned to someone else. That action severs those ties. So says Rav Shimshon Pincus, step one, Yes, we have to work on kavana. And yes, we have to train and practice to try to hold the thought that we're talking to God, which will elevate us to those higher and higher plateaus. But maybe a first step, an easier step, an external practical step is that when we're making brachas, when we're benching, when we're saying Asher Yatzar, when we're davening, let's start by trying to not do actions which show that we're not talking to God, because those are actions which sever the tie as opposed to elevating us higher and higher.